Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 384. I can remember a time not long ago where if I saw a 5-game series at Busch Stadium in St. Louis, I would borderline not want to watch those games because I knew the Brewers were not going to be able to win that series. I'd be happy if they won 2. What a different world we live in now. 5 games set for the Brewers in St. Louis. They take 4 out of 5. And I'm not saying it's over because those words will haunt me if the Cardinals come back. And there's still the Cubs in between the Brewers and Cardinals. But they put the Cardinals 10.5 games back after this week. And the Cubs are 7 games back. What a performance. The doubleheader sweep, just one little blip on the radar on Wednesday, but that was it. We got the debut of Luis Lara, the 21-year-old outfielder. They signed that 7-year, $31 million deal to earlier this year. He is up. I assume he's going to play quite a bit, so how that makes things look different in the outfield, I'm not entirely sure. We got a little preview of that this week. He was electric, though, in the couple of games he got action in this week. The speed this kid has, my God. So we'll talk about that. We will talk about Brandon Woodruff. Not a great injury update there. They have found another injury in that shoulder. Whether this is something he can rehab from and maybe come back at some point this year, or if we're staring down the barrel of another shoulder surgery, it feels like, and I'm sad to say this, it kind of feels like we're close to the end for Brandon Woodruff. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he comes back, whether it's surgery or not surgery, and he's strong and can help this team toward the end of the year and maybe in the playoffs and maybe even beyond that. I hope for all of that, but it definitely has an ominous feel to it with another shoulder injury or another injury in that throwing shoulder that has just been decimated by surgery. The guy's shoulder is pulled pork. I mean, what do you want? I'm sad for him. I think it stinks for him, for the Brewer fans out there, for everybody, but not a great diagnosis there, and he is already seeking a second opinion on that, so we'll discuss that too. One last series before the All-Star break, and we get a hell of a pitching matchup on Sunday. Jacob Misiorowski and Paul Skeens for the final game of the first half. We're going to talk some Bucks. We got the Giannis video on Monday, so I guess he was waiting for it to become official on Monday. We talked about that. Remember, I was getting a little irked. I would say I was irked on Monday that we had not had a farewell video, a thank you video, thank you to the fans and Milwaukee and the franchise and the podcasters out there, a heartfelt thank you to all those equally important people. And we got it on Monday, and it was perfect. And the response from the Bucks on their social media pages was perfect. And I was all set to be the angry ex-girlfriend here when it came to Giannis. I was going down that road, and now I can't possibly do it. We're going to play you clips from that. He also posted a 36-minute sit-down interview with Bucks TV legend Jim Pashcke. We'll play you a couple of clips from that. Bucks do swing a trade as well. They send out Taurean Prince and Gary Trent. They bring in Caris Levert. Really good move there, I thought, by John Horst. And they bring back Pete Nance on a 2-year deal. We'll discuss that, too. Summer League today. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. In time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan a smash up the middle, face into center. Here comes Gomez around third. A throw and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, it's complete interception. And there is your Super Bowl dagger.
Booker the drive, gets inside, leans in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, and a pinnacle ball throws it down.
Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it.
It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
We're back to the 3-minute intros. It feels good. Feels good. Feels comfy. Feels like easing into a Barca-lounger having a 3-minute intro again. Welcome in on your Friday morning. Hope everybody out there has had a decent work week. Like, rate, and subscribe if you can. Please do that. Give us a rating. It always helps with the algorithm. As we talk about, we're always trying to please our algorithm masters, our algorithmic overlords. And if you like this or you share it or whatever, then if somebody out there is listening to another Packer podcast or a Brewer podcast, it might pop up and say, hey, you might like this too. Guy's trying hard. He's really trying. Oh, he's trying. So that helps. It really does help push the podcast out there, and the numbers keep going up, so I appreciate that. Like, rate, and subscribe however you consume podcasts, and don't forget the email. If you have any questions, any takes, any gambling advice, I'm always open to semi-researched gambling advice. You can do that at strangebrewpod@aol.com. strangebrewpod@aol.com. We'll have a mailbag episode at some point yet this summer. I've got 3 or 4 in the bin that are not like time sensitive that we'll get to. And if you want to have any Brewer takes, maybe we'll do one before the trade deadline. That would be in what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks? And there will be a lot of Brewer conversation, of course. I already have one that kind of talks about that. Maybe somebody else the Brewers could target as a starting pitcher that could cost less but be maybe as effective or more effective than Tarek Skubal. There's a little tease for you. We'll get to that in 21 days. Sometimes I do that on the B93 morning show. B93, I'll get a text in, and we play a ton of requests on the morning show, and I'll get a text in, I'll see it, then we'll do something else, and it'll get buried behind a bunch of other texts, and I forget about it until 3 hours later. Then I'll play it 3 hours later, and I'll always say on the morning show, B93, the only station where you can make a request, and maybe you'll hear it 3.5 hours later. B93. Well, I do have an email that kind of revolves around that, so any maybe trade deadline takes you might have, or any ideas of what the Brewers should do at the trade deadline, maybe we'll make it center around that, and then I've got some other non-time sensitive emails we can get to as well. strangebrewpod@aol.com. Now, let's talk first, before we get into the Brewers series, and Lara, and Brandon Woodruff, and all of the stuff that happened in St. Louis this week. Before we do all of that, I do want to touch on the World Cup because we talked about it on Monday, heading into Monday Night Football, and it was the U.S. and Belgium.
I know. Meant to. That's how we drink it in Belgium. It's called a Belgian dip.
Do we really need another Austin Powers? Sounds like one is coming. Those were, I can't tell you. Now, movies were different back in the day, and just entertainment in general was different when those movies were coming out in the late 90s. My buddies and I'm pretty sure not for the first one, because you don't really know if it's going to be that good, and then that one quickly gained steam, obviously. I think for The Spy Who Shagged Me, which Heather Graham, one of the all-time beautiful people, I think we can all agree on that, and her in that movie, in the second Austin Powers, my goodness. So let me just stare up into space here for a second. What happened to John? 6 seconds of just thinking about Heather Graham and Austin Powers, too. I'm pretty sure we stood in a line on opening day for Austin Powers 2, The Spy Who Shagged Me in 2000 or 2001, whenever that one came out. And they were all great. And I actually think Goldmember, not to have a hot take here, but I actually think Goldmember is a really underrated of the trifecta, is actually really good. That one got panned. Didn't seem like a lot of people like that one. I thought it was an excellent movie. And there is, I think, a fourth one. Now, I forget what they're endorsing. There's a TV commercial out right now with Austin Powers. And I think that is to kind of dip their toe into the water, but I do think an Austin Powers 4 is coming. Yeah, people forget his dad was from Belgium. Belgium and the USA Monday night, and we went over on Monday, round of 16. We cashed that ticket. Luckily, I put nothing else down, and I thought I would, but I just didn't have the vibes. Even though I was excited to watch the game, and I was kind of flipping between that and the Brewer-Cardinal game anyway, and the whole Monday Night Football thing, and a chance to get to the quarterfinal round for the first time since 2002. I was getting into it a little bit, but I didn't have great vibes that this was still going to be something we could bet on and win on. So I didn't put any other extra cash down. So we end up with just the bet to make the round of 16. We cashed that, so we had a profitable World Cup. But they get to that matchup on Monday night in Seattle, and it just kind of feels like the same old when the bright lights are on. This is Team USA when the lights are the brightest and the attention of the nation has turned to soccer.
No, get those lights off.
Off.
Turn them off. They're too bright. Turn them off.
Christian Pulisic
get those lights off.
When everybody's kind of getting behind him.
Turn them off. They're too bright. Turn them off.
Turn them off.
Ready? Turn off the lights.
Turn
off the lights.
That's how it went on Monday. And they were down 1-0 in a blink. Now, I lied. I did bet on the over on goals. I forgot about that. This is how you know you have a gambling problem, when you forget about the bets you laid down. Like, that was Monday. Today is Friday. There have been a lot of tickets that have been won and lost in between then and now. I had the money on the 2.5 on the over of the goals, total goals at 2.5, and that cashed before halftime. So we did have a doubly, so we ended up plus 230 then all told on the World Cup. The poor U.S. goaltending really had us feeling pretty good with that over on Monday. But they were down 1-0 in what? The 9-minute mark? Now they do tie it, and then 2 minutes later, Belgium's up 2-1. And then, like I said, I was not sitting there watching every minute of the match after that. I was kind of watching more of the Brewer-Cardinal game on Monday night. But my wife and I were flipping back and forth, and every time I would turn on the U.S.-Belgium game, it felt like Belgium was just in control. They were machines. Everything they did had a purpose. It felt like they had a system they were working within, and all the parts fit together. Everybody knew where they were supposed to be. And the U.S. just kind of felt helter-skelter. Like, again, the lights were a little bright, and they got behind early. Then they were on their heels, and it just never felt like they had a chance. And I think the term they use in soccer is outclassed, right? That's it. We got outclassed. They got outclassed. And I am not a soccer expert, obviously. But they got outclassed. Every time I turned that match on Monday, Belgium was just dominating, and they roll 4-1. So it ends again in the round of 16, and it does kind of feel like, I think there was a tweet that I shared with my buddies where it said, 1994, U.S. loses in the World Cup. Well, now we're going to spend a ton of money and resources. We're going to build up the youth program. We're going to be better the next time around. 1998, out in the round of 16. Well, we're going to build up the youth program. Every year, it feels like every year we do this, or every World Cup we do this, where we feel like the team has a little bit of a role going, then they get stomped on by a team that is clearly better than them, and Belgium's a top 10 team internationally, right? They're the 9th-ranked team internationally. The U.S. is the 17th-ranked team internationally, and it played out that way. It just played out where Belgium was the much better oiled machine on Monday, and it looked like the U.S. was overmatched despite all the good vibes in pool play and beating Bosnia. Belgium ain't Bosnia, I think is what we learned on Monday, which is, I don't know that it's a calling card for Belgium. I don't think when you get into Belgium proper that's the sign, like, welcome to Belgium. Belgium ain't Bosnia. Wouldn't be bad. But it was just so clear they were a tier or two above where the U.S. is trying to get to. I think that's still, but it feels like they've been trying to get to that now for 30 years. I will grant you this again, and I feel like I have to qualify this every time. I am not a soccer expert, but I will say this. I heard and listened to a lot of disappointment. Carly Lloyd called out Pulisic, and Lawless, and everybody was pretty critical of the effort on Monday. But when you look back at the World Cup as a whole and what the U.S. was able to do in pool play and what they did in the round of 32 against Bosnia, even though it kind of feels like they're hitting the same stumbling block, like we're going to fix it this time and it never happens, it's like me at the Thanksgiving appetizer table. It's like every year. That's the U.S. in the World Cup. Every year I say to myself, I am not going to eat too much cold-packed cheese, and I'm not going to eat too much smoked salmon. I'm not going to eat too much spinach and artichoke because I want to eat the stuffing and the turkey and the mashed potatoes and the sweet potatoes and the pumpkin pie. I don't want to have a bellyache before we even get to the dinner, the proper dinner. And every year I tell myself that, and every year I screw it up at the hors d'oeuvre table. That's kind of how the World Cup and the U.S. men's national team feels like. Every year they get stopped in kind of the same spot. When I listen to some of the experts talk about their run this year, I will grant them this. It does kind of feel like, even though they didn't make the round of 8 and they didn't have their best finish ever, it does feel like that they are still taking steps forward because the pool play effort was really good and the effort against Bosnia was really good, and then it just felt like they were overmatched and the lights got too bright against Belgium. But even though they kind of end at the same spot, you feel like maybe progress is being made. It's like in the NFL where not all 13-win teams are the same, right? You know, they can all end the same, but we know if you watch the games, if you watch a full year, not every team that finishes 12-4 gets there in the same way. A 12-4 team on one side is not as good as, like the Packers what was the first year LaFleur was there in 2019? I remember the back-to-back years. The first 2 years LaFleur was in Green Bay. And in 2019, they went 13-3, and they were a 1 or a 2 seed. But we all knew, right? They were the 2 seed, right, that year, and they ended up in San Francisco in the NFC Championship game. And I forget what that running back's name was that nobody ever heard from again. He ran for like 2,000 yards in a game. But we knew, as fun as that regular season was, you knew they were barely getting past teams. They were winning games in quirky ways. That 13-3 is not the same as the 13-3 the next year, the pandemic year, when they were blowing people out, boat racing people week in, week out, and they felt like the best team in the NFC. Both teams finished with 13-3 records, you know what I mean? But they're not the same. It's like one of the biggest misnomers. Was it Bill Parcells who said you are what your record is? Or was that Herm Edwards? Feels like one of those guys. Bill Parcells, Herm Edwards, somebody like that. That was a famous quote in the 90s where somebody was asking, I think it was Parcells, where they were asking Parcells to assess his team, and he said, you are what your record says you are. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. That doesn't leave a lot of room for nuance. Not every 13-3 year is the same. Not every 8-8 year is the same, going back to the 16-game schedule. I know the records are different now. But all of those, the 13-3 year in 2019 is not the same as the 13-3 year in 2020. Just based on the way they were playing, the way they were dominating games the year after that, that felt like a more authentic 13-win team. So even though it ends in the same spot, kind of, that round of 16, that doesn't mean that there isn't progress being made. Does that make sense? It feels like, based on everything I've read or listened to about the podcast, and not to pat myself on the back, but I've listened to at least 11 minutes of World Cup analysis. And we've just talked for 12 minutes. We've actually gotten past what I've listened to from a non-expert voice like mine. We've actually talked more than we've listened to, which is important in the podcast world. But from everything that I've read and listened to, even though it ends in the same spot, it ends in the same record, as a way to argue this, it doesn't mean that they're not taking steps forward. It doesn't mean that they're not getting a little bit closer to the ultimate goal of getting back to the round of 8, the Final Four, maybe at some point winning a World Cup. But it is, for the casual observer like myself, it does just kind of feel like you end up in that same spot every year. Carly Lloyd doesn't really call out Christian Pulisic here.
It's a bit of a downer for us being out here now after this loss, but I felt like they lost the game before they even stepped out onto the pitch, and I'm not sure why, and I don't know the reasons, but just from the beginning, just chasing, tentative, scared, just not confident on the ball. And I think big-time players, you wanted some of those big-time players to step up in big moments. And I got to be honest, I was a bit disappointed with Christian Pulisic. I think whether he wants to be the star of this team or not, we didn't see enough from him in this particular game and really the whole World Cup. Little glimpses here and there, but, look, aside from this loss, I think on the brighter storyline, it's been a fantastic World Cup. This team has united the country. They have, gotten American fans to fall in love with them. And there is a bright future, but this is just a real disappointing loss to go out on.
I think that summed it up pretty well. So the World Cup run comes to an end. We got to play this one last time just because...
Evan, we're down 2 points.
Calm down, Greg. It's soccer. It's soccer.
So... I watched, not to toot my own horn, but I did watch probably 40% of all the Team USA games.
I don't want to toot my own horn, but toot. I don't want to toot my own horn, but toot.
The legend Arn Anderson. That came to an end on Monday, 4-1, in pretty emphatic fashion. Now let's talk about the Brew Crew this week. They were in St. Louis for forever. They probably had their mail forwarded to them, am I right? It's a lot of dad jokes you can make about being in a place for a 5-game series. Hey, I had to start paying taxes in St. Louis. They were there so long. They were there a long time. I mean, how many games? 5 games. You never hear of a 5-game series. The doubleheader was Tuesday. That made up for the rainout back in May, and that's a part of the reason the Brewers are playing this dreaded run of 18 games in 17 days, but they are almost to the end of that. 3 more games on the docket. Now, before we talk about the doubleheader on Tuesday and calling up Luis Lara before that game on Tuesday, let's talk about the Monday game and the Brandon Woodruff update, which was not a good update. So real quick, the Monday game, because I know there have been so many games. Brewers were down 3-0, kind of looked like, again, and they've done this a lot this year. Remember we talked about that Cincinnati game on a podcast episode or 2 ago where they're down late. It's 2-3-0, 4-0. It's the 6th or 7th inning. The offense isn't getting hits with runners in scoring position. The pitching hasn't been great. And then out of nowhere, they're able to kind of lock in for an inning, and that's all they need, and the bullpen takes it home. So it kind of looked like Monday was going to be a loss. Shane Drowan was really good on Monday. Didn't get a lot of help from behind, but he had a couple of errors that cost him a few runs. 6 innings of 1 earned run, 3 runs, but 1 earned run. And he ends up getting the win. Shane Drowan, again, you go back to this Caleb Durbin trade, and Caleb Durbin has come on like a house of fire. He has really become an important part of that Red Sox team, which I'm happy for. I don't care. It's an AL team. I don't really care whether or not the Red Sox win or lose unless it's, a Brewers-Red Sox series or they meet up in the World Series. But beyond that, I'm pulling for Caleb Durbin. We all loved him on the team last year. He was the quintessential Brewer. It made sense to sell high maybe on him a little bit, get 3 guys, get 2 controllable lefties, which have been outstanding for this team, and Hamilton's been a good utility player, and he had a good game Monday, which we'll talk about in a second. But Shane Drowan comes out of Monday, 6 innings with 1 earned run. He's got a 4-2 record and a 2.97 ERA. I know we're going to talk about Kyle Harrison, too. He's struggling with some elbow soreness, apparently. He has not had a couple of good starts recently, and all of a sudden, Drowan's numbers, ERA and stuff like that, that's better than Harrison's. But they're down 3-0 in the 7th inning. David Hamilton rips a 2 RBI double to get them within a run, and then Terang, the big go-ahead opposite field RBI, 2 RBI single, put them in front 4-3. And it's just like they get up off the deck and have one nice inning. And the bullpen on Monday was great. Chad Patrick, 2 scoreless. Trevor McGill keeps rolling. Remember when people wanted him DFA'd? Remember? The North remembers. He had a scoreless inning with a couple of strikeouts, and they rally for a 4-3 win on Monday. It was an important win on Monday to set the tone, set the bleeping tone, to set the tone for the series, because as we talked about on the Monday podcast, heading into the series, I forget what it was. So they won. The Brewers end up picking up 3 games. So the Cardinals were 7.5 back on Monday. But remember, we talked about on Monday, the Cardinals had to look at this as we only have one more series against this team beyond this series. It's the last series of the year at American Family Field. The Cardinals had to look at this series and say, hey, we're 7.5 back. That's a big nut to crack. We've got 5 games, the rare opportunity of having 5 games at home against the division leaders. We've got to make up some ground here. We got to win 3 or 4 or take all 5 and get ourselves back in this race. So to be down 3-0 and the Cardinals had 8 outs to get that one to the finish line, they're probably thinking, all right, here we go. Let's set the tone for the series, get a game, and put some pressure on this team. And the Brewers rally for a 4-run 7th inning, and the bullpen's great, and the Brewers walk out of there with a 4-3 win. And Cardinals fans, I think on Monday had to feel like, God, here we go again. In fact, there is a Cardinal fan who, like our friend M-Bone with the Cubs, when he live streams watching the Cubs, there is a Cardinal fan like that. And this is very on brand because when we play M-Bone videos, he's bleep this, bleep that, F-bombs everywhere. As we know with the St. Louis Cardinals, they view themselves as literally like the Cardinals in the Catholic Church. They view themselves as baseball royalty, as treating the game with respect. So it's very on brand that the Cardinal universe M-Bone is much more polite.
Just something to go good on our side, and that is not what I'm talking about. The Brewers devil magic every freaking game. Every freaking time. 1 out, bases loaded. 2 outs, bases loaded. It doesn't matter. And another one. Another one. All with 1 out. Dude, I can't tell if our pitching is that bad or if the Milwaukee Brewers are just the greatest team ever.
The latter.
I'm speechless. I have no more words. This is pitiful. Investigate the Brewers, bro. I've just come to a conclusion. We have the worst bullpen in Major League Baseball. There's no other words to say. The Milwaukee Brewers have devil magic as well. Like, I will never understand how they get away with all this. Bases loaded, 2 outs. Oh, let's shoot a gap real quick. Like, to a certain point, it's not good hitting, bro. This is insane.
I love it. I can't explain to you. I wish I could. I should be able to. That's my whole job. If you're my age or older, because you go back to the 82 World Series and in my time, the 2011 NLCS and losing that 1-6 and always feeling like the Cardinals had the better of the Brewer franchise, the fact that a Cardinals fan is talking about Brewer devil magic, that was me. I mean, that guy was me in 2007, in 2008, in 2011, where it felt like the Brewers couldn't beat the Cardinals. Like I said in the teaser, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago, if I saw 5 games in St. Louis before the All-Star break, I would just assume we're losing 4 of those 5 games, or at least 3 of those 5 games. The fact that there is a Cardinal fan like that out there complaining about Brewer devil magic, it's just such a role reversal. I'm not even sure what to do with it, if I'm honest with you, because that was us for decades and decades and decades. And now in the Murphy era, and a little bit in the Counsell era, but more so in the Murphy era, it feels like those have been completely flip-flopped. And it's just weird. It just doesn't feel right that a Cardinal fan would be saying that about the Brewers. But that's what kind of happened a lot in this series, and especially on Monday, where it looked like the Brewers were just going to sleepwalk their way to a loss, which they're 3-4 games over 500. Those are going to happen. And they wake up for 1 inning, 2 clutch hits. Bullpen takes it home from there. Bingo, bango, 4-3 win. And McGill gets his 14th save of the year. Now, Tuesday was doubleheader day. And before the game, they make the move to call up Luis Lara, which for the life of me, I'm saying it right now, that took me, when they signed him to the contract extension, I had to talk about that on Sportscast. And then, of course, on Tuesday's Sportscast, or Wednesdays, we talked about them calling him up, and the big hits he had in Game 2, and the speed he showcased in Game 2 of that doubleheader against St. Louis. Every broadcaster has issues. Like, for instance, I have clinical depression. I'm kidding. Every broadcaster has issues. Well, maybe. with certain, I was going to say every broadcaster has issues with certain words, or certain names. There are some things that, every broadcaster has those words where I don't know why I can hear it said correctly 1,000 times, and when I try to say it, I can't say it right. For whatever reason, with Lara. See, I already said it wrong. Didn't I say it wrong? Lara. That's how you say it. Lara. 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 For whatever reason, my brain wants to say that Lara. I have to go back, run back the tape and see if I said Lara leading up to this. I think I said it wrong leading up to this. I don't know what it is. There's a synapse in my brain. It's sitting there somewhere. Well, maybe we'll kill it off with some bourbon tonight. And it just wants to say Lara every time. I had to redo like 3 sportscasts on Wednesday morning because I just can't say Lara. And you know what I tried to do? This is so stupid. This is how my brain works. Are you ready for the dumbest 20 seconds in podcasting history? Buckle up. The way that I tried to trick my brain into doing it correctly is in the TV show Family Matters. Remember Urkel in the TV show Family Matters? Now, I can't even remember if his crush in that show, Laura Winslow, was her name Laura or was it Lara? But the way Urkel always said it was Lara. That's what, Giannis cheese? Lara. That's how I tried to practice it in my brain every time I said it. That ends the dumbest 30 seconds in podcasting. That's how I tried to trick my brain into doing it right. I still did it wrong. Lara. They call him a 21-year-old who's having a fabulous season at AAA Nashville, hitting .320, hitting for power that he had not showcased in the minor league level so far. He has got speed to burn, which we saw as he rounded the bases late in the game on Tuesday. Excellent outfielder. They signed him to that kind of Cooper Pratt deal. Remember, they signed Cooper Pratt to an 8-year, $51 million deal with 2 club option years to control him for potentially 10 years. And then about a month later, they signed Lara to a 7-year, 7-year, $31 million deal. But that one with 3 club option years could be worth up to $80 or $90 million if he performs. So you have potentially control of 21-year-old Cooper Pratt and 21-year-old Luis Lara for the next decade. And this is going to be a stalwart on this team as long as he is healthy and performing. Now, obviously, if he falls off or he's hitting .220 for 2 years, I mean, maybe at some point it doesn't work out. But these, in theory, are going to be 2 cornerstone players for many, many years to come. They call him up, and they send Blake Perkins down. Look, Blake Perkins, Balake. Blake Perkins, I think, is a lovable guy. He's got kind of a heartbreaking story with his mom, which we talked about from last summer, and then he has that big Mother's Day hit this year. We all like Blake Perkins. He is an excellent defender, Gold Glove caliber defender, center fielder. The guy just can't hit. I mean, he just can't hit consistently. And the here and there, the spotty playing time probably is not helping him. If he got regular at-bats for 2 or 3 weeks where he was in there every day getting 3 or 4 at-bats, maybe he'd be able to turn it around. Heading into this year, he'd always kind of been a 230, 240-ish hitter, which I'm fine with. As a 5th outfielder who plays great defense, fine. But he's been hovering in that upper 100s, low 200s kind of batting average. So they send Blake Perkins down. What is going to be interesting is I don't think they're calling up Luis Lara to be a 5th outfielder who plays once a week the way Blake Perkins was. Now, this is a blue-chip guy that you are paying money to that, like we just said, is hopefully going to be a key part of a long run here, of a decade run of more success at Brewer baseball. And I don't think they're calling him up then to play him 1 or 2 times a week. So how does the outfield break down then? You know what I mean? You've got Garrett Mitchell, who's been great in center field, and he's finally been able to be healthy. You've got Jackson Chourio, who's an everyday player. And then maybe this is the odd man out or the guy who's going to lose some playing time, Sal Frelick, who is a Gold Glove defender in his own right. He literally has won a Gold Glove. Not a Gold Glove caliber defender, a guy who literally has a Gold Glove in right field. And then he's been okay offensively and up until the first 2 months of this year. His month of June, though, Sal Frelick hit .344, had an 800 OPS. He's kind of come back down to earth the first week and a half here of July, where I think he's batting sub 200 in the month of July. But we talked about Frelick coming out of the month of June. Heading into June 1st, he had been really bad at the plate. Low 200s, 210, striking out a ton. Finally got it together in the month of June. But you've got him, and now you've got Lara, and you've got Jake Bauers in the outfield, which is not something I can't imagine heading into the regular season where they thought they were going to have to find outfield playing time for Jake Bauers Up until this year, Jake Bauers had been a nice backup piece, a guy you could put in there once or twice a week at first base, maybe the outfield, maybe DH, gives you a little bit of power. We all know heading into the year the MO on Jake Bauers was he does hit for some power, but his batting average in his career is low 200s, and he strikes out a bunch. Then he has this insane run during spring training, but whatever, it's spring training. Who the hell knows what that means? But he's been able to carry that over. You want to get Andrew Vaughn in. I mean, this is a good problem to have, but Jake Bauers needing outfield time because you want him in the game and you want Vaughn in the game, and I think you want Yelly as a DH. Yelly had a great game one in the doubleheader. We'll talk about that in a second. He is mired in a terrible rut. But if you put him as the DH, that takes up a spot. So how do you get Vaughn out there? How do you get Bauers out there? How do you get Churio, Frelick, Mitchell, and now Lara out there? They'll figure it out, but I do wonder how the outfield playing time breaks down. If I had to guess, the person this will cost the most is probably Frelick, right? Because Mitchell's been so good and is an elite defender in center field. You're not going to give Jackson Churio too many days off. I would think that right field spot is the one where maybe Frelick misses some playing time, and that's where Lara's going to cut out some at-bats. But they call up Lara. God damn it. They call up Lara on Tuesday. They call up Lara on Tuesday. I'm just going to keep saying Lara over and over and over again until the beatings will continue until morale improves. They call up Lara on Tuesday. Did not play in Game 1. So Game 1 was Jacob Mizorowski. Did give up a couple of home runs early. And then you hop on Twitter. Poor Jacob Mizorowski. He is the victim of his own expectations. I preach this so much on the B93 Morning Show. And anytime we have young people that come through the building where they want to take a tour of the studio, or they say, here's a cautionary tale when they come into the B93 studio. Here, it's like Scared Straight, except not as much swearing in prison time. Not as much. But whenever we have young people that come through here, like last year we had the South High broadcasting class, a bunch of seniors come through here. I always preach, and I'm not sure if their teachers enjoy it, but I always preach in the professional world, when you get to the professional world, expectation management. Because if you come into a job like a house of fire, you're answering every email, you're doing everything A+, personable person, getting along with everybody. That's the expectation then. That's what they expect of you. And any slippage of that, like even if you give 85% one day, any slippage from that 100% is going to be looked at with a raised eyebrow. So always, always, always make sure you're on top of expectation management. Now, Jacob Mizorowski has put up these otherworldly numbers. And then when he goes out there, and ultimately his line on Tuesday was 7 innings of 3-run ball with 11 strikeouts and no walks. That is a dominant start for almost anybody else in baseball. But he gave up those 2 home runs early, and you went on Twitter, what the hell is wrong with this guy? What a bum. What a bum. And I don't think people were being facetious about it. I think people genuinely thought, well, league's figuring him out. They're figuring him out. I saw that so much. They're figuring him out. He's throwing that cutter over the middle. They're going to figure him out, and these numbers are going to go south in a hurry. Can we calm down? He is allowed to give up runs. But he has been so good this year, the best pitcher in the NL. And you think back to that Friday performance a few weeks ago against the Phillies. My wife and I were there, 15 strikeouts, no walks, no runs given up, 1 hit, less than 100 pitches. That's the expectation bar. So he gives up a couple of home runs in the first 3 innings, and everybody on Twitter is wondering, what the heck's wrong with this guy? But he did settle in. I think he retired the last 11 or 12 in order. He was firing 103 at the end of that game. So 7 innings of 3-run ball, 11 strikeouts, and no walks. And the Brewers, again, have to rally on Tuesday. And again, they're able to do it by a 4-3 final. Yelly in Game 1 on Tuesday was excellent. Had 3 hits, had 2 doubles, had the go-ahead RBI hit. Now, I guess Murphy, after the Game 1 on Tuesday, in the postgame, was talking about how good Yelly was. And he was telling the reporters, he's been so frustrated with the batting average and the fact that he's not performing the way that he thinks he should. He was telling the reporters he came to the field with us, with the coaches at 7 a.m. Like, that's how much he cares about this and is putting the work in and is trying to find what he had last year when he hit almost 30 home runs and knocked in 100 runs. And the year before that when he was hitting 315 before he got hurt through 80 games or 85 games or whatever it was. So Murph, I think, was trying to intimate to the reporters there to get the message out to Brewer fans that, yeah, we get it. His batting average is 240 and the OPS is barely above 700 and he's having a really bad month, but he is putting in the work. He's getting there 5 hours before everybody. He's working on his swing constantly. So they were talking about that in the postgame after Game 1. And then Murphy said, and this is another example, Yelly came right up to us after the game and said, don't rest me Game 2. I want to play Game 2. Well, as it turns out, maybe they should have rested him in Game 2 because he had a 3-hit game in Game 1 with 2 doubles. He was 0 for 5. He did have an RBI ground out in Game 2, but he was 0 for 5 in Game 2 and kind of was not great the rest of the series after that. But he had a really good Game 1. 3 hits, 2 doubles. That kind of looked like the Yelly, and it was a clutch hit, too. It's the one that put them in front. Uribe got the save in Game 1 on Tuesday because McGill had worked 3 of the past 4 days. And that's another thing. You go into a doubleheader and you are going to have key parts of the back end of your bullpen that were not going to be available, and you still find a way to win. Then in Game 2, we got the Robert Gasser game. What an impressive start. He is starting to look it again, isn't he? I know we've talked about Robert Gasser and how in 2024 he was the number 1 pitching prospect, and he didn't have the same kind of cachet. It's got cachet up the yin-yang. He didn't have the same kind of buzz that Miz did coming up, but he was. In 2024, he was the number 1 pitching prospect in the Brewers system. He came up that year, had 5 really good starts, won a couple of games, and then shoulder blew out, Tommy John surgery, came back at the end of last year, and up until the last couple of weeks really hasn't been able to recapture that 2024 form that made him the number 1 pitching prospect and had him looking good through 5 starts, that cup of coffee in 24. He's starting to get back to that, man, and this could be big for this team. 7 2/3 in Game 2 of that doubleheader, and that's big. For a starting pitcher in this day and age to go 7 2/3 regardless is huge. When you're on Game 2 of a doubleheader and you've used some key pieces in Game 1 of the doubleheader and you know McGill's not available all day, for him to go that deep into the game to save the bullpen, I mean, you got 2 in both of those games on Tuesday, 7 innings out of Mizorowski, 7 2/3 out of Gasser. You couldn't ask for much more from your starting pitching in a doubleheader on the road. And the Brewer offense broke out in the 7th inning on Tuesday in Game 2. Now, Lara had a big hit. He made his debut. Lara had a 2 RBI single with 2 outs and the bases loaded in the 5th inning. That gave the Brewers a 3-0 lead. And in the 7th inning in a 3-2 game, they blow it open. Joey Ortiz, stay hot, Joey. Solo shot got that inning started. Terang RBI double, Sanchez 2 RBI single, Churio RBI single, Pratt RBI double. Pratt had a great week in St. Louis. Really good week in St. Louis for Cooper Pratt. He had multiple hits, I think, in 3 of the 5 games. And he had an RBI double. He had a triple on Tuesday in Game 2 as well. And the Brewers blow it open, a 10-2 win in the second game on Tuesday. That also featured, this got Twitter going, of course, baseball Twitter, and of course Cardinal Twitter, which, as we talked about, they are the archbishops of baseball. And anybody that gets out of line in terms of etiquette, St. Louis Cardinal fans will be there to correct it. So in the 9th inning on Tuesday in Game 2, Brewers up 10-2. The Cardinals are throwing an outfielder is pitching the final 2 games, or the final 2 innings, because they didn't want to burn another bullpen arm. So you have a position player pitching those final 2 innings on Tuesday in Game 2, and he is lobbing, like the Rookie of the Year we talked about last episode, floated. He is lobbing things in there 35 miles per hour. Jacob Mizorowski throws it 106. This guy was lobbing cookies in there at 35 miles per hour. So it's a 10-2 game. It's the 9th inning. A position player is pitching and throwing 35-mile-an-hour loopers in there. Jackson Churio comes up, and I guess the story goes that William Contreras and even Pat Murphy, they dared him in the dugout, triple dog dare him to hit left-handed. Now, you know Churio's a right-handed batter, of course, but he goes up there left-handed, and the dugout is hamming it up. He goes up there. He almost hit a home run with his left hand. He hit one to the warning track, and I think if that pitch had any more speed on it, a lot of the home runs in Major League Baseball, it's bat speed and hitting it with the sweet spot on the bat, but it's also using the velocity that the pitch is coming in there with as a way to help it get out. It's hard to hit a home run on a 35-mile-an-hour pitch, I would think. Take it from me, a podcaster. We haven't done an episode of that in a long time. He almost hit one out, and he goes back to the dugout. Everybody's cracking up. But you just knew the arbiters of baseball, the Cardinals fans, the stick-up-their-ass, stodgy baseball fans, were going to get upset. And the one guy, I forget who it was, whose tweet went viral, he qualified it by saying, now look, I'm not the fun police, but, but, there's a bunch of people that just work their whole life to make it to Major League Baseball, and it's an insult to the people that are busting their butts in Double-A and Single-A and rookie ball, and they've been there for 4 or 5 years, that a guy who has the privilege of being at the Major League level is wasting an at-bat hitting left-handed when he's not a left-handed hitter. You knew that was all coming, but everybody was having fun with it. Murphy was having fun with it. There's a position player throwing 35 miles per hour. I think decorum is out of the door when you have a position player throwing 35 miles per hour. At that point, all bets are off. It was a funny moment. And the Brewers romp to a 10-2 win. It is so hard. I can't think of in my lifetime, not that there's been a million doubleheaders, but it is hard to sweep a doubleheader, especially on the road. And they're able to do it. 4-3 winner in Game 1, 10-2 winner in Game 2. Now, I think it was Tuesday with the Lara call-up. See, God bless America. Lara, with the Lara call-up. I wish this were a bit. But this is a broken brain. I wish it were a bit. I wish. But Lara got called up on Tuesday. That's also the day, doubleheader day, where we got the news on Brandon Woodruff. And the news was decidedly not good, so we might be staring down the barrel of, remember we played this last time?
How long will he have to be in the cast? August. And now rotate from the shoulder slowly. Oh, whoa! Funky butt-loving. Did he say funky butt-loving?
Unless we're heading for the funky butt-loving surgery, I don't know, man. I don't know if we're going to see Woody again. I hope, like I said in the teaser, I yearn. I hope. You can have as much hopium as you want. Hope can kill a man. I hope that we will see him again. I hope that he will make starts and have an impact on this team. Like we said in the last episode, though, even if he does do that at some point this year, I don't know how you would ever trust that you can get through an entire playoff game or start him in a playoff game where you never know. His velocity could disappear in a blink. And then you're in a critical game, you've got to go to a bullpen game in an emergency role. Even if he were to come back and start and contribute, which I think is the best case scenario, the best case scenario for the Brewers and Woody would be if he can rehab this and at some point he gives you 3, 4, 5 starts and they're quality starts and he helps them win a few games. That would be great. Even if he is doing that in September, I don't know how you would trust having him on the mound in a Game 3 of the NLDS or a Game 3 of the NLCS because you just don't know if he's going to lose his velo. Unless you have some kind of guarantee from the medical staff or the training team that that's not going to happen, I don't know how you do that in a big playoff game. Best case scenario would be if he's able to rehab this like he did last time and come back and give you 3, 4, maybe 5 starts on the really high end and help you win some games on the back half of the year. But it does feel to me, and I don't even want to say it because we talked about when Woodruff came out of that game on Saturday in Arizona, he was wiping tears away as much as I'm sure he didn't want people to see that. I think we all saw that, and he was emotional in the postgame because he knows, nobody knows better than him. The injuries, the rehab, the shoulder surgery, all the things that he has been through, he knows that he's an injury or two, or maybe this is it, where that could be the last time he's on a major league mound. I hope that is not the case, but the fact that they found a second injury now in that shoulder on an MRI, and then the fact after that he is immediately getting a second opinion, when you've got a guy who's got shoulder problems, has already had major reconstructive shoulder surgery, and he maybe needs another one, and we're getting a second opinion, none of this adds up to a situation where I feel like we are going to see Woody again on a mound. Again, I hope I am stone cold wrong. I hope in August at some point or September he's making starts and he's helping this team win games and he's contributing in some way other than being a mentor to the other pitchers on the staff. But that information that came out on Tuesday just felt sour. It just felt like, I don't know. And does he even want to have another surgery? That's a whole nother thing. Could he come back from another big shoulder surgery and rehab all offseason again and try to come back at 34 years old? I saw somebody tweet when that information came out on Tuesday. It said something to the effect of, it feels like Woody's body is trying to tell him something and he is just fighting it tooth and nail because he wants to prolong his career. Why wouldn't he? Of course he does. But I thought that really resonated with me. It feels like his body is trying to tell him something. And at some point he may just have to accept that, as bitter of a pill as that is going to be to swallow. And I do sort of agree. It does sort of feel that way, right? But that was not good news. We'll see what the second opinion has to say, but he is on the 15-day IL, and I think at best it'll be, I don't even know, a month and a half maybe, a month and a half. If we are to see him again, I would think maybe that's what they're targeting, and that would be a similar timeline to the one that he had earlier in the year where he had the dip in velocity, he came back, had 2 really good starts, and then that was the third start where he saw the same thing happen again. But that was not good news on Tuesday, despite the doubleheader sweep, and you take the first 3 games. Now, Wednesday was one of those meandering games. Kyle Harrison, not great again, second straight start. Now, he is also dealing with some left elbow soreness. Murphy talked about that postgame. He talked about that postgame. He said, if you're a pitcher, it's on the best place on the elbow, on your throwing elbow, that it could be. I guess, okay, sure. Doesn't sound great, but okay. And he said he's not concerned. Murph said they're not concerned about this being a bigger deal. So I don't think they'd throw him out there, right, and have him pitch 4 innings if they really felt like he was on the precipice of a major injury. So I'm going to take their words for it coming out of Wednesday and say he probably just needs a break. And Harrison said, too, I just need the All-Star break. That was his last start before the All-Star break. The last 2 starts have not been good. The start back in Vegas a month ago was not good. He did have some good starts after that. He had 6 shutout against the Phillies after that blow up in Vegas. He had 5 2/3 of 1-run ball. He was putting together decent starts. I saw some people just kind of talking about, boy, he hasn't been the same since that Vegas start against the Athletics. Well, he had 3 really good starts after that. The last 2 have been short, and he has not been as effective. And clearly, whatever that elbow issue is impacting him. He gave up 3 runs in 4 innings, and then the Cardinals blow the game open with a 2-run shot off of Koenig in the 6th inning. Koenig's been nothing but bad since I complimented him. You're welcome. And that gave the Cardinals a 5-0 lead. Cooper Pratt's sac fly got the Brewers on the board, but that was it. That was the game I thought I was going to watch on Monday, where you just kind of lose one 4-0 or 5-1. They lose that game 5-1. And Harrison now hits the All-Star break, 8-2 record and a 3.01 ERA. It's hard to complain about that. The ERA has gone from the mid-2s to a little above 3 with those last 2 starts, but those are really solid numbers for the first half for Harrison. And now he gets a long break. We're not going to see him again, I would think, until next weekend, Saturday. They'll start again on Friday, right? Next Friday after the All-Star break, and I would think that'll be Miz on Friday right away. And then Harrison maybe Saturday or Sunday. So he's going to get about a week and a half or almost 2 weeks off, and hopefully that is enough to rejuvenate whatever issue he has with that left elbow. But I wouldn't say I was super happy to hear that, because, now we don't know when Woody's going to come back. Gasser was impressive, and you got Logan Henderson back. We'll talk about that in a second for Thursday. So you're getting some guys coming back, but it would be nice if you could have Harrison healthy and pitching the way he was prior to whatever this little elbow issue is. Then last night, Logan Henderson on the hill. He made his return from the IL, solid, 5 1/3, 3 runs given up. 2 of those runs were on a 3-run bomb that Chad Patrick gave up, but they were his runners. But I thought really solid. 4 strikeouts for his first start in a month, looked pretty sharp. And the Brewers get 2 on the board in the 2nd inning. We had the Jake Bauers, colloquially named Rake Bauers. He had one of the craziest slides in that 2nd inning. It was a Neo Matrix slide. That's what they even called it on the TV broadcast. He was on second base. There were runners on first and second with 1 out, I think. And it was a ground ball back to the pitcher, and Bauers was obviously off on contact. You have to be with runners on first and second. And it looked like he was going to be dead to rights in between second and third. Well, he puts a little stutter step, a little Bo Jackson out there. And for whatever reason, that got the Cardinal third baseman off balance. He fell over, and then Bauers kind of swoops around him like Neo and grabs the back end of that third base bag, and he's safe. And that ends up leading to a couple of runs in that inning. So the Brewers got a quick 2-0 lead, up 3-0 in the 3rd inning. Rake Bauers again, 3-run home run, 17th of the year for Bauers. What a first half. 6-0 lead at that juncture. Now the Cardinals do come back. Jordan Walker, who looks like a real legit power bat now for the Cardinals. He leads the major leagues in RBIs coming out of yesterday. 3-run bomb off of Chad Patrick with those 2 inherited runners. That made it 6-4. But the Brewers got that right back. Got a home run from Terang in the 7th inning, a sac fly from Contreras in the 9th inning, took an 8-4 lead. And Uribe took it home from there as the Brewers get that 8-4 win. So they take 4 out of 5 from St. Louis. And now St. Louis, 10.5 back again. I'm not stupid enough on July 10th to put my foot in my mouth. Now, I will be probably at some point, but to put my foot in my mouth and say the division race is over, or the Cardinals at least are out of it. But 10.5 games is a lot of games. Even though there's a lot of season left, that's a lot of games. So the Brewers come out of Thursday, 25 games over 500 at 59-34. And the Cubs lost on Thursday afternoon, so a 7-game lead on Chicago and a 10.5-game lead on the Cardinals, and the Brewers are still on pace for 100 regular season wins. What an incredible run this has been in the first half with 1 series left. But to go into St. Louis with the Cardinals knowing that's probably our best shot with 5 at home to get back in this division race, and you not only win the series, you take 4 out of 5. What an effort from this team in St. Louis all week long. Now, 1 series left before the break. It starts tonight in Pittsburgh. It kind of always feels like the Brewers are sputtering a little bit heading into that last series in the first half. They're not sputtering this year, but have injuries and some fatigue and a long road trip. It always feels like that first half ends in Pittsburgh, right? So 3 games in Pittsburgh. Brandon Sproat on the hill tonight. They're going to face some good young pitching here. Brandon Sproat takes on Ashcraft. I've got this guy on my fantasy team. You want to hear about my fantasy baseball team? Braxton Ashcraft. Braxton Ashcraft is 26 years old, 9-3 record, and a 3.24 ERA, and he strikes a bunch of guys out. This Pirates team, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year. But they're 500, and they have signs of hope, like real hope for the first time in probably a decade when McCutchen was in his heyday and they were making the playoffs 2 or 3 years there. And I think they won a wild card game against the Cubs maybe back in that day, or maybe they lost one at PNC. But that team in 2014, 2015, 2016 with McCutchen and some of the pitching they had then with Garrett Cole back in the day, that was a pretty good team for 2 or 3 years. This is their first real hope since then, and they have a tremendous young pitching staff. Braxton Ashcraft is a part of that. Of course, Paul Skeens is a part of that. Bubba Chandler, who does not have great numbers so far this year, but he's one of their top prospects. We'll see him Saturday. Their starting rotation is the reason why they have some real hope here. How far are they out of the wild card? They are 500. Let's see here. I mean, they're not that far out of it. 5 games back of the final wild card spot, which right now is held by the Marlins. The wild cards are the Cubs 1, Phillies 2, Marlins 3. Cardinals are 3 games behind the Marlins. Then the Nationals are 2 games over. Some surprising teams this year. And yeah, the Pirates are 5 games back. That's not a lot with all the games left and the pitching they possess. So it'll be Brandon Sproat on the hill tonight taking on Ashcraft, a 5:40 first pitch. And then you've got Shane Drowan going on Saturday. What is that one? A 3:05. And then Sunday, what a matchup we get heading into the All-Star break. An 11:15 a.m. start time. Jacob Misiorowski and Paul Skeens. They matched up against each other last year. Remember a Thursday afternoon game at AmFam Field? That was electric, and the Brewers won. This will be a fun one. The Miz and Paul Skeens on Sunday. Now, Paul Skeens he's an all-star, but he is not having a very good year by his standards. Paul Skeens going into Sunday has a 7-8 record, whatever the Pirates. It's the Pirates, they're 500. 7-8 record, a 3.58 ERA. Now, he does have 123 strikeouts, but this is year 3 of Skeens. In year 1, he had a 1.96 ERA. In year 2, a 1.97 ERA and won the Cy Young. So a 3.58, while those are not terrible numbers, for him, like, again, expectation management, for him, those are not the best numbers in the world. We'll see if he can maybe keep on the little slump he's on Sunday against the Miz. But that's a fun pitching matchup. What has Skeens been doing? Yeah, 6 innings of 2-run balls last time out, 4 innings of 7-run ball before that. Yeah, he was not good in the month of June, really. But that's a fun one heading into the All-Star break. Now, that also means, and as cool as it would be to see the Miz be the starting pitcher for the NL in the All-Star game next week, I think we care more, right, with this Brewer team sitting at 25 games over 500 and hopefully winning a division and hopefully making a run at a World Series. We want as many regular season starts out of the Miz as possible, so there's no world where I would prefer the Brewers to pitch somebody else on Sunday to save Misiorowski for the All-Star game. Pass on that. No thank you. As nice or as fun as that would have been on Tuesday to watch the Miz be the NL starter, he would be the second Brewer NL starter in the All-Star game ever behind Ben Sheets in 2008, or with Ben Sheets in 2008. That would have been a lot of fun, especially given the context of last year where the Miz got in after 6 or 7 starts, and that led to all that conversation about whether he deserves to be there or not, and on and on. It would have been interesting the year later that not only is he there on his own merits, but he's also there as the best pitcher in the National League and a starter. But we want to see him start regular season games way more than we want to see him start the All-Star game. So that will take him out of the All-Star game, I would think. And 11:15 start time on Sunday, Misiorowski and Skeens, and then you hit the All-Star break, and then where do we start? I haven't even looked at the second half schedule. They start at home. A 9-game homestand with Miami, New York, and Colorado. Those are some winnable games in there. Although, again, Miami's been a much better team than anybody thought they'd be. 10 games over 500. New York has been floundering, and Colorado, one of the worst teams in the league. Well, that's nice. Start the second half with a 9-game homestand. All right, Brewers and Pirates tonight, 5:40 first pitch. Now, we have to talk about Giannis, and we have to talk about the farewell video. Like I said in the teaser, I was getting prepared. I think we even said in the last episode, because we had not gotten the farewell video yet. And we've been over it. It is kind of odd for a guy who has professed his love for Milwaukee so many times and Bucks fans in the franchise. Even though the trade wasn't official, it kind of felt like, well, why haven't we heard from Giannis yet? Well, he must have been waiting for it to become official. And I was getting set to maybe be the bitter ex-girlfriend. I was getting set to maybe make some Twitter burner accounts. I was getting set to maybe post some bad stats when he has bad games this upcoming year or anything like that. I was getting set to maybe be that guy. For as much as I love Giannis, I was starting to kind of go down that path, but then he drops this video, and I'm going to play it in its entirety. It's 2 minutes long, and then we're going to play a few other clips from the sit-down with Pashcke. He dropped this video on Monday at 11 in the morning or at noon, I think right after we clicked publish on this podcast. And it is so perfectly done, and the Bucks' response is so perfectly done that it's hard to harbor any kind of bitterness anymore. You've got it. Here's the thing in radio, John. You've got to actually click the button on.
The city of Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin, I want them to remember this from me. Don't worry about the basket. Don't worry about the championship. Don't worry about the winnings. Don't worry about the losses. I try to be like them.
We're going to take an iconic selfie video so I can watch it. I can watch for the rest of my life and remember this day. Can we do that? Let's do that. Come on.
I believe the city of Milwaukee is blue collar. It's people that work extremely hard every single day. They give all the hard-earned money to come watch the Milwaukee Bucks, to come and feel something, to come to be a part of us. I hope that I was able to represent them the best that I could, and I was like them. I showed up to work, did everything that I was willing to do, all the dirty work, just like them. I hope that bringing a trophy to this city meant something to them because it meant so much to me.
Milwaukee, we did it, baby! We did it!
I want you to hear it from my mouth. The city of Milwaukee will always be in my heart. This is my home, and this is a place that I had my kids. My mom is here, my father is here, my brothers played here. They made me the man that I am today. That will never, ever change. No matter where I am, Milwaukee will always be my city, my team, my family.
I want to be an NBA player.
With the 15th pick, the Milwaukee Bucks select Giannis Antetokounmpo from Athens.
Oh, I can't be mad now. I do. I do get a little choked up watching that and just remembering everything about his career. Now, look, maybe the Bucks are going to be better. I put this in the blog. We wrote about this and had that video on, so that would have been Tuesday morning. Maybe the Bucks are going to be better than everybody thinks they are, and I actually think they are. I don't know what the season over-under win total is going to be for this team. I can't wait to bet the over. I like the collection of young talent. I love Taylor Jenkins as the coach. As we've been over, there's no purpose to tanking anymore with the anti-tanking rules. There's no purpose to trying to win 15 games. This team is going to try to win, and I think they're going to be a lot better than people think they're going to be this upcoming year and the next year, maybe the year after that. But even if they do, in a world where they do get to a point where not that far in the distant future, 5-6 years or whatever, maybe they're a playoff team this year, and then maybe they're a little bit better the year after that, and then maybe they are a top 4 team again in 4 or 5 years with some of the draft picks they get. It's just not going to be the same. Whatever era of winning or however long it takes them to get back to that point where they are thought to be a top team in the East, where they're maybe thought to be a title contender, it's just never going to be the same as it was with Giannis because it was such a unique relationship where you get this international kid who I know, as we've said before, I think that's the biggest part, where he got to come to America kind of for the first time and embrace American culture, embrace Midwest culture. We got to see this 18-year-old kid from Greece and Nigeria absorb all of that in one fell swoop. He's not jaded by being in the AAU culture of America, which is where he would have been if he grew up here. He would have been playing AAU Travel League from 7-8 years old. I think that is a part of the reason why some of those guys just have that kind of an attitude at 17, 18 years old, because that they've been catered to their whole lives. Giannis never had that. He was humble, and now maybe some of this is a little showy now at this point in his career, but he had that humble origin story, the kid that came from nothing, selling trinkets on the streets of Greece, trying to avoid getting arrested. Now he's come into this money, and he's on this NBA franchise, and the NBA franchise needs him as much as he needs them. You're just never going to have that again. However the next era of Bucks winning looks like, you're never going to have that special relationship again. And I thought that video really hammered that home. His love for Milwaukee and the fans' love for him, even though last year was dreadful and maybe even the year before that wasn't all that enjoyable. More often than not, it was a very special, unique relationship that will just never exist again. The Bucks could win. Now, maybe they will be the Thunder. We talked about that, where the Thunder traded all these insanely talented pieces. 10 years later, they win their first title, and they almost make the finals again this year. And they're going to be in the mix now for the next 2 or 3 years. And maybe the Bucks do get to that at some point down the road, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, and they're a title contender, and they're in the finals. Like, what the heck? Let's say they win 2 titles in the next 20 years or 2 titles in the next 15 years. It just won't be the same as it was with Giannis and the summer of 2021. And I'm seeing some of that stuff pop up now. I know we've talked about this because of the pandemic and because that year started later and the playoffs happened later. The Bucks and us as a fan base, we're always going to have the on this day in NBA history, on this day on the Facebook memories or whatever you look at every day. The NBA, for the most part, is done by Father's Day weekend, except that year. So we're always going to have that on those days in late June, early July. When they clinch the title, I think on July 20th is when they clinch the title, that memory will pop up. We're going to be the only fan base that has that because the pandemic made that year so unique. And I just went back because I think I had a Facebook memory pop up on July 6th, I want to say, that was game 1 of the NBA Finals. And I had a picture of myself at, I think, 11 years old, my dad and I getting set to go to a Bucks game, and I had my Vin Baker jersey on and my Bucks hat on. And the post I had was, if I told this kid what I was watching tonight, game 1 of the NBA Finals, if I told this version of myself in 1995, rooting for this terrible franchise that he loved, that we'd be watching an NBA Finals game, he wouldn't believe it. And then I started to watch on YouTube the intro packages to Game 1 and the intro package to Game 6 and all the fans, the 65,000 fans that were in the Deer District, and the way that team just unified the state and unified Milwaukee and the parties that they had. And there was another element there of just coming out of the pandemic where we couldn't hang out with people. You couldn't put 65,000 people outside of an arena and 18,000 people inside of an arena. So that whole summer and that whole run not only will be cherished forever because of the results of it, it'll be cherished as that kind of first time in 9 or 10 months where we all got to hang out with each other, where we all got to party and kick back some beers and celebrate something. So there was just that added oomph to it in 2021, and it's just never going to be that way again. And that's fine. We got to live it. We got to enjoy it. I don't think I took any second of it for granted. But it's important when I watch that video and when I watch those videos, I just think to myself, even if they do get to a point where they're a title contender again, and as fun as that will be, and nobody will have more fun than me if they get to that point again. And if they overachieve this year and they win 40 games and they make the playoffs, oh my God, this team traded Giannis and they're actually better this year. I will enjoy every minute of that as well. But it's just, it will never reach the level of the culmination of Middleton and Giannis and Drew together and that summer and having been through the wars and losing in the playoffs and finally getting over the hump and the added elements of it being in July because of the pandemic and the get-togethers in the Deer District. It'll never be like that again. And that video really hammered that home to me. Now, the other thing that he did, which I thought was awesome, and honestly, I haven't even watched the whole thing yet. I've probably watched about half of it. So Giannis posted that video, and again, how can you be mad at him after that? He also posted a 36-minute sit-down interview with former Bucks TV legend Jim Pashcke. And that's who I grew up with, Pashcke and McLaughlin on the TV broadcasts on Channel 18, Channel 24. Those are the games my dad and I watched together. And I thought that was really neat that he got Pashcke back in the fold to do that interview, that kind of exit interview, I guess, 36 minutes that Giannis had that he put on his own YouTube page. Now, I'm going to play a couple of clips of that. Am I on the wrong page here? Here we go. And I think there are some important things to kind of hammer home with Giannis and that entire interview. Number one, he said that he is doing this because, like we all thought, he wants to get back to a point where he's competing for titles, and he did not think that was possible in Milwaukee right now.
When I take my showers at night, and I think I'm like, maybe I've waited too long. You know, and I see guys playing deep into the playoffs, and I think I'm like, okay, maybe if I switch teams and I go somewhere else and have a better opportunity, I can play deep in the playoffs. I can go try to chase another championship because I really want that. And I'm scared that maybe if I don't take that decision, that when I'm going to be 37, 38 years old, hopefully, and I'm retiring, I'm going to say, why you didn't take that risk? You know, and people don't understand it's a risk.
It's a difficult place to be.
Yeah.
I would say that you could always come home.
Now, here's another point, and Pashke brings this up, and I know we've talked about this. You could always come home at the end of it, and Giannis had this to say.
That'd be awesome.
You've earned that. You'll always be welcomed here.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome if I can go and play and maybe come back. Kevin Garnett did the same thing. I saw this clip of him walking into the arena, and they gave him a standing ovation, and people till this day love him. And you know, some people don't always feel.
They always will.
Yeah.
You've earned that.
Yeah.
They love Pashke. He's coming back, right? Okay, we've talked about it. He is going to come back at some point. He is going to come back and play a year or play 2 years at the end of his career. And he references Kevin Garnett. That's exactly what Garnett did. Garnett was this beloved figure on a small market team, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, they never got over the hump. They never won a title with him. Eventually, he felt like he had to leave to chase a title. He gets that title in Boston. Then he kicks around to Brooklyn. And then he ends up back in Minnesota for the final 2 years of his career. We've speculated about that on this podcast since the trade. Is there a chance at some point 5 or 6 years down the road, if it all kind of works out and the contracts work out, that Giannis would come back for a year? His response to that idea that Pashke threw out there, it hammers home to me that I think there's a better than 50% or better than 60% probability that we are going to see Giannis in a 34 jersey, in a Bucks jersey, for at least one more year on the back half of his career. Now, he also talked about being afraid of change.
That will always be yours.
I'm scared. I'm scared.
About?
I'm scared of change. I'm scared of change. I'm scared that the grass is not always greener. I'm scared of, I have things, people love me here, people respect me here, people allow me to be myself here in the city, and I'm scared that I might never find that ever again.
He just sounds like we all do this, right? I'm still doing this at points in my career. I think we've all been through that, right? You do something for 10 years. Well, he's done it really well. I don't know if we've done it really well. We've been doing this. We've been doing the B Morning Show and working in this building I am coming up on my 20-year anniversary in October. And there have been chances to move to a different market, to do something different, to work in a different format. Like with everybody. I'm not unique in that. I think there are a lot of people out there that love what they do, like Giannis does in Milwaukee, but at his age, at 32, 33, and it happened for me in that age, and it's happened again recently, where you get these opportunities that come up, and do you chase that, or do you stick with what's comfortable? And like he said, if you stay with where you're at and you determine I'm staying here, do you look at yourself in the mirror in 40 years and say, why the hell didn't I do that? I mean, these are all things everybody goes through, and I just like that Giannis seems to be being very honest about that, refreshingly so, which he's been his whole career. Now, I know there's a segment of Bucks fans that feel like he was disingenuous and kind of a liar at the end of his time here, whatever. I just think it was a relationship that was headed for a split, and it wasn't a good year. It wasn't a good year and a half, and that happens. But I think in that interview that I've watched so far with Pashke, he just sounds like anybody in life that goes through, should I change my career? Should I do this differently? Could I get a raise if I did that? What if I went back to school and got a degree? What if I picked it all up and moved to California for a year or two and just see if I can hack it out there? You know, I think we all have those thoughts, and that seems to be the thought process he's going through, and he does seem conflicted, like we all would be. If you finally pull the trigger and say, you know what, I'm going to try something different, he has that tone to him in the way he's talking about it of, I don't know if this is going to work out. Maybe I'll regret this within 3 months of being in this new place. Now, I don't know how much you're going to regret being a multimillionaire in Miami, but it could be. We're a year into that. If they have a bad year right away or it just doesn't come together, he could think, oh, God, this was stupid. Why did I just stay in Milwaukee? I thought it was a really fun, and I haven't, again, gone through the entire thing, but I thought it was a very honest sit-down interview with Pashke. I thought that was a great add-on to the video that he put out on Monday. So it's hard to be mad at him now. I think we've all kind of come to good terms. It reminds me of the end of the movie, The Breakup. Remember that movie with Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston, and everything's going great in the beginning, and then they hit the bricks and they break up, and it's ugly for a while, and then they kind of go their separate ways. And then I think what we're going to head to is the end of that movie, spoiler alert, where they kind of see each other on the street and the wounds have kind of healed and they're happy to see each other and maybe we'll see each other again sometime soon. I think that's kind of where we're at with the Bucks and Giannis, where everything was going really good and then there was a bad period and now they're going their separate ways. But already it feels like we're kind of at that end scene where, all right, go and do your thing and we'll do our thing and maybe we'll see you sometime soon. And everybody kind of feels okay about it walking away from it. I'll never forget seeing that movie. My buddy Nick and I, when we were up in Point, that must have come out right after we graduated and were doing some baseball play-by-play. And we had a rare night off and we went to see that movie, and my girlfriend at the time and his girlfriend, now wife, I remember watching that movie, and it isn't a super happy ending. I think it's an honest ending to that movie, but you kind of feel like in the cinema world, you sort of felt like, if you've never seen it before, oh, they'll get back together. They'll find a way to get back together and live happily ever after. And it doesn't quite go that way. There's an ambiguous ending where you're not quite sure. Oh, maybe we'll see each other again. And they smile at each other. God, it's so nice to see you. And it feels like they're making progress and want to be around each other again, but there's no guarantee that that's going to come back together. I remember my girlfriend and his were so angry with the way that ended. We sat in that theater. They thought, that's the ending. They didn't end up back together. Just angry about the way that ended. But that was, I thought, a kind of an honest ending to that movie. And it kind of feels like that's where we're at right now with Giannis, where after the video, after watching the interview, after accepting that this has happened, now, I'm not sure I wish him well in Miami. I don't want him to get hurt. I want him to pile up stats and rise in the NBA rankings, of course. I don't want any success from Miami. I say that now, though. But if it got to a point where Miami was in the finals with Giannis and the Bucks were not at that level, I'd probably find myself rooting for him, I guess. I'm not overtly rooting for the Heat to do anything while he's there, but I do think we're at a point now with the way this week has gone and some finality to it, and with all the things he had to say and the goodbye video, it kind of feels like we're on decent enough terms now between the fan base, the city, the franchise, the fan base, and with Giannis. So the Bucks also make a move this week real quick. We have two guys going out, Taurean Prince and Gary Harris, going to, where are they going to? Detroit. They're going to Detroit. And coming back to the Bucks, Caris Levert. This is another really smart move by John Horst. I do wonder, and we've talked about John Horst's GM-ship at least a few times on this podcast, how he's been pretty good with trades. He has not been all that great in the draft. Although, as we talked about an episode or two ago, some of the draft picks that he's made, they've cut bait on too early, and they've had success then elsewhere. So is he the worst drafter? I guess we'll find out this year. With 2 lottery picks in Burries and Ament, depending on how they go, maybe that will give us a better assessment of what John Horst is as a drafter in the NBA. But I do wonder if we're going to get to see a different version of John Horst now, because John Horst, for a lot of his GM-ship in Milwaukee, was trying to put together a title team, but he was also, one of his primary motivating factors as the Bucks GM was to keep Giannis happy. Is this move going to keep Giannis happy? Is this move going to keep him signing another long-term extension? You know, when you have a superstar player like that, it's almost a different way to be a GM, because you have to try to put together a title contending team. You want, of course, the team to win, but you also want to convince that player to sign contract after contract after contract. And sometimes you might make a move or two that are a little out of the ordinary, because not so much because you think it's going to help you win a title, but because you think it's going to help you keep a guy around. Now that he is freed of that, now that that is not his primary motivating factor, I do wonder what kind of GM we're going to see, what kind of GMing we're going to see, if you can make that into a verb, out of John Horst. It's different. It's a different MO now that the superstar is gone and it's a Taylor Jenkins team. It's a team that is led by its head coach. I think we're going to see some different moves that they probably would not have made if Giannis were still here. Now, this is a move I like, because you had a roster crunch anyway. Taurean Prince was entering year 3. He was pretty solid in year 1. He was hurt most of last year. He came back at the end of the year, and he was, again, pretty good in the last 15 games of last year. Gary Harris did not play at all last year, so whatever, no loss there. You get Caris Levert, 31 years old, 6'7" guard. He averaged 8 points per game for the Pistons off the bench last year. He is a career 13.5 point per game scorer. And most importantly, he is in the final year of a $14 million deal. Now, for the Bucks, what you want to do this upcoming year is put as much young talent together as you can and try to win as many games as you can because, again, tanking doesn't matter in the new tanking world, and you don't even have your own draft pick in 2027 anyway, so that doesn't matter. So you're going to try to win this year. So you want to put together a good, young, talented team that can win games, but you also want to have flexibility where you have a bunch of quality players that are on expiring contracts because you can then flip them at the trade deadline. You can either hang on to them if you're having a much better than expected year, or you can flip them for more draft assets at the trade deadline. So right now, you've got Tyler Hero on an expiring contract. You've got Jaime Jaquez Jr., so 2 of the 4 guys they got back from Miami are on expiring contracts. That's fine. And now you pick up Caris Levert on an expiring contract. So it gives you some options once you get to the trade deadline. At this point, it feels like they are at least going to start the year with Tyler Hero. I know in the immediacy after the trade for Giannis, some people thought they'd swing him to Detroit, or they'd trade him right away and he wouldn't even play a game for the Bucks. It does feel like he is definitely playing the first half of the schedule for Milwaukee. But when you assess this team now in February, with all of these guys on expiring deals, if you're really overachieving, you can keep them, and you can continue to see where this goes for this year, and then after this year, you can determine if you want to give them extensions or if you just want to let them walk, and that opens up a ton of money for you heading into next year. And by the way, the Bucks still have a ton of money for this year. The Bucks still have $35 million open they can spend for this year, heading into this upcoming year. There is a big move that they could make. I don't know what that move would be, but the money is there, and the expiring contracts are there where they could do a couple of things here, and they could maybe bring in a superstar player or bring in a player that's near that caliber. I don't know if they'll do that this year or not, but the option is there. But now you've got a lot of pretty good talent in Hero and Jaquez Jr., Kyle Kuzma's in the final year of his deal, and now Levert, who they get in this trade. You've got a lot of assets that other teams, once we get to February, they may look around and say, boy, we're one big scoring guard away from being a title contender. Oh, Tyler Hero's available. Or we feel like we're one defensive guard away off the bench from being a real title contender. Oh, Caris Levert's in Milwaukee. We could get him for a second-round pick or a first-round pick. So John Horst has been able to assemble a very good, young, talented team in a short amount of time. And he also has all of these options now with guys on expiring deals. So I love that trade. Caris Levert coming, and then Taurean Prince and Gary Harris on their way out. He also signs Pete Nance back on a 2-year non-guaranteed deal. We talked about Pete Nance last year. I like what he does. I don't know that Pete Nance is a guy that gets 15 minutes a night on a title contending team. But at the end of last year, with all the injuries they had and as a 32-win team, he was a lot of fun to watch. Pete Nance is a guy who does a lot of the small stuff. He hustles, he dives after loose balls, he sets solid screens, he's a decent three-point shooter. Again, he's not ever going to be a guy, I don't think, that is going to be a guy who averages 15 points and 8 rebounds per game and shoots 40% from beyond the arc and is a starter or a 6th or 7th guy off the bench on a really good team. But you need guys like that. You need guys who do all the little things right, who put in the work, who practice, who set solid screens, who have effort and hustle every time they're on the floor. You need guys like that, and it's good to have them on your team, even if they're not seeing regular minutes in a regular season game, in practice, in training camp. Those are really good guys to have around, and I thought for a little bit they were going to let him walk away with all of this new young talent they have that they didn't have on last year's team, so that's a part of the reason he was playing. But they do bring him back on a 2-year, and it's a non-guaranteed deal. So that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be on the active roster on opening night. But I like all of the little stuff that he does, and I just think it's a good culture guy to have around your team. So those moves made this week as well. All right, that'll do it for us here. Long episode today. We'll get back after it on Monday. Little different podcast schedule next week as I'm off on Friday next week. We'll talk about that on Monday. We'll recap the Brewer first half. We'll talk about the All-Star break and the Home Run Derby and all that kind of stuff. Any Bucks news and any Packer news as we're getting a little bit closer to training camp now. We'll discuss that on Monday. Have a happy, safe weekend. We'll chat with you then.